His name is Metatron, and the voice of God does not speak to you, it breaks you. At Mount Sinai, the Creator's voice tore through the atmosphere, and the people ran. They did not kneel, they did not weep with joy. They retreated in raw, biological terror, begging Moses to make it stop, because they understood something that modern religion has carefully forgotten. The human body cannot survive an unfiltered command from the divine. This is not mythology, this is physiology. Perfection hitting imperfection, pressure becoming rupture, rupture becoming silence. Heaven recognized the problem immediately, and heaven engineered a solution. A mouth that was close enough to carry the name, but separate enough to be restrained. A being through whom divine speech could enter the material world without incinerating everything it touched. What you're about to hear is not a sermon, it is a cover-up buried inside Scripture. Chapter 1. The Voice That Flesh Could Not Survive. The old terror begins in broad daylight, before an entire nation, at the foot of a mountain that had begun to burn. The air thickened into something breathable only by instinct, and then the voice came. It did not echo, it entered. It passed through the ground and up through the soles of their feet. It turned the space between their ribs into a chamber of command. Every syllable carried weight, not meaning, but mass. The kind of mass that compresses a human chest until breathing becomes a negotiation with something far older than language. The people understood immediately. If they heard this voice again, they would not survive. They did not fear that God would lie. They feared that God would speak too directly. This is the horror that systematic theology has spent millennia trying to smooth over. The divine word is perfect, but the vessel is not. Perfection, passing through weakness, becomes pressure. Pressure becomes rupture. Rupture becomes silence. And silence, in this context, means a heart that has stopped beating. The Scripture records something peculiar here, a messenger, a being whose voice must be obeyed, who carries God's name within him, who is not God himself, and yet speaks with an authority so absolute that a warning had to be attached to him. Obey him. Do not rebel against him. Do not provoke him, because my name is in him. Read those words again, slowly. My name is in him. This is not a metaphor. This is a declaration that something, some presence, some fire, some fragment of the uncontainable, has been deliberately placed inside a created being. The messenger does not carry information. He carries presence, enough fire to change whatever it touches. And this is where the machinery of heaven becomes visible. Metatron is not a metaphor for divine communication. He is the evidence that heaven has engineering, that God's voice is not simply spoken, it is routed, filtered, contained, given a vessel. And the vessel itself becomes dangerous precisely because it works. Chapter 2. The Messenger with the Name Inside Him. Metatron does not fit inside clean theology. He sits at the border where categories collapse. In some traditions, he is linked with Enoch, the man who walked with God and then vanished from the earth. But the mystical imagination sees something far more disturbing than a simple disappearance. Enoch was not taken. Enoch was processed, a mortal drawn too close to the furnace, a human identity stretched until it became office, flame, and function. The transformation was not an honor. It was a repurposing. Something human was made usable by heaven. And usefulness, real usefulness, is a kind of erasure. He becomes the scribe, the prince of the presence, the one who records what no earthly witness will ever remember. But it is the voice theme that makes him more terrifying than any recorder. Metatron is the being through whom words are permitted to happen. He is shaped by the command that passes through him. Like a throat designed specifically for one frequency, like a chamber built to resonate with exactly one voice and no other. The title given to him in certain texts is dangerous enough to qualify as heresy in any other context. Lesser Yahweh. The name can be delegated. A measure of uncreated authority can be placed inside a created form. A chamber of bone and spirit can become a vessel for the command that spoke galaxies into existence. And this is the nightmare. When Metatron speaks, the listener must ask, whose voice is this? The angel's? The name inside him? Or the one beyond the name? The uncertainty is the horror. He may not be false at all. He may be the official channel, the approved mouth. The one mechanism through which divine will enters the lower world without reducing it to ash. And if that is true, then disobedience to his voice is not rebellion against a messenger. It is collision with the order of reality itself. Chapter 3. The Angel Who Could Not Be Worshipped. Heaven placed a warning around Metatron. Not for his protection, for ours. Because when a being sits near the throne, carries the name, and speaks with delegated authority, confusion becomes inevitable. The forbidden question rises in the mind of anyone who looks too closely. Are there two powers in heaven? This is spiritual fracture. This is the thought that unravels monotheism from the inside, and the tradition answers it with fire. Metatron is punished, struck, made an example. Not because heaven forgot who he was, but to demonstrate exactly what he was not. He carries the name but is not the source. He transmits the command but did not author it. He can be corrected, he can be struck, he can be made to bleed. And this makes him more unsettling, not less. Because a rebel distorts the voice, a rival steals it. But a servant, a perfected servant, can carry it with absolute fidelity. Every syllable preserved, every frequency intact. No distortion, no error, no mercy. Perfect obedience may be more frightening than rebellion ever was. Chapter 4. The Voice Behind the Veil. There is one boundary left. One more layer between creation and the voice that would unmake it. The veil. Some traditions imagine Metatron hearing words from behind it, not seeing the speaker, only receiving the command as it passes through the fabric that separates realms. He does not look upon the face. He does not enter the inner chamber. He waits at the boundary, receiving what cannot be received by anyone lower, and delivering it to those who can survive it only because it has already passed through him. He is the filter, the transformer, the surgical instrument that reduces voltage from infinite to survivable. And this is where the horror crystallizes into something colder. Metatron was not given a gift. He was given a function. He was not elevated, he was calibrated. The human, the former Enoch, was not preserved inside the angel. He was replaced. The flesh was overwritten by purpose. The identity burned away until only the office remained. What stands before the veil is not a person. It is a sealed instrument through which divine speech enters creation without ending it. And the most terrifying thing in heaven is not a rebel with a sword. It is a voice permitted to pass through a being who can no longer say no. Chapter 5. The Verdict That Kills Possibility. Here is what the theology books will not tell you. When Metatron speaks a decree, he does not describe what will happen. He removes what else could have happened. This is not poetry, this is mechanics. Before the voice, there are futures, branching paths, open doors. The prayer still hanging in the air, unjudged, alive. But after the voice passes through the room, after the syllable leaves the mouth that carries the name, the door closes. Not loudly, not violently, simply completely. The prayer will not be answered. The decree has already gone through, and the voice has already crossed the place where mercy can be negotiated. This is the function that makes Metatron more terrifying than any destroyer. The destroying angel takes life that already exists. Metatron takes something earlier. He takes the life that was still becoming, the version of you that might have recovered, the outcome that was still forming, the breath before the word, still possible, still warm. Then the decree passes, and possibility itself stops breathing. The voice is not loud. Loudness would make it smaller. It is exact. A whisper with the weight of Sinai, a syllable carrying the pressure of the throne, a name passing through a servant who must not be mistaken for the master, but whose words cannot be distinguished from the master's will. This is divine speech as execution, not because every word kills the body, but because every true decree kills possibility. A voice that does not describe death, a voice that makes death unnecessary to resist, a voice that simply closes the door through which life was trying to continue. And Metatron is the lock on that door. Chapter 6. The sound of judgment entering the room. Imagine the silence before a verdict. Imagine every angel lowering its face. Imagine the veil trembling as a command passes through the fabric that separates realms. Not seeing the speaker, only receiving the pressure of the word. Then imagine Metatron opening his mouth, and for one impossible second, nothing in creation dares to breathe. This is not metaphor. This is the physics of absolute authority entering a space too small to contain it. Reality does not hear and consider. Reality obeys. Stone obeys. Fire obeys. Angels obey. History obeys. The command does not request. The command does not persuade. The command arrives, and everything in its path discovers how fragile freedom actually feels. This is why his voice destroys life. Not because every word is a weapon, but because every word is a wall, a boundary, a limit that was not there before the syllable was spoken, and cannot be removed after it lands. The voice does not need to threaten. The voice simply needs to be. And the space where alternatives used to live is already gone. Metatron hears the decree. Metatron carries it. Metatron cannot soften it. Read those last 3 words again. Metatron cannot soften it. He is close enough to know what the word will do, close enough to see the futures collapsing as the command forms, close enough to watch the mercy that was almost granted turn to ash before it reaches anyone who needs it. But he is not free enough to overturn, not free enough to pause, not free enough to add a single grain of mercy to the word that is passing through him. This is the weapon voice, not a rebel's voice. Rebels can be fought, not a monster's voice. Monsters can be understood, but a servant's voice, a perfected servant's voice, coldest of all, because he can stand at the edge of divine secrecy, hear the word that will end someone's world, and still answer, "It is done." Chapter 7. The Mouth of the Unbearable God. The question must be asked now. It has been building across every chapter. It has been pressing against the inside of every paragraph. If God spoke directly, creation could not survive the contact. Every tradition agrees. The voice at Sinai made people beg for distance, not because the words were cruel, but because the pressure of truth was too heavy for mortal lungs. So heaven answered with a compromise. A mouth, a vessel, a filter. And the compromise is Metatron, filtered but not defanged, contained but not weakened, translated but not tamed. The same voice that once made a nation retreat in biological terror now moves through a being built for proximity. The same authority that could unmake galaxies with a breath now passes through a throat designed specifically for one frequency and no other. This is a horrifying elegance of the solution. Heaven did not remove the danger. Heaven routed it. The voice is still lethal, but now it has an address, a point of exit, a mouth that was made to open and release what no one else could survive carrying. This is why God speaks through him, not because God lacks a voice, but because creation lacks the strength to bear it. And Metatron is not a kindness. He is not a mercy. He is an instrument calibrated to deliver what would otherwise erase everything it touched. A mouth of fire, a servant with the name inside him. A scribe who does not merely record judgment, he becomes the sound of judgment entering the room. The mouth of the unbearable God. What happens when he reads yours back? There is one detail left, one buried line in the tradition that most commentators skip over, because it is too uncomfortable to examine. Metatron records every word you have ever spoken, every syllable, every whisper, every curse muttered in darkness, every prayer you abandoned halfway through, every promise you made and broke and pretended to forget. He has it, all of it, written in books that do not decay and ink that does not fade. Now imagine him reading it back, not in accusation. Accusation would be human. not in anger. Anger would be comprehensible, but in the voice we have been describing, the exact voice, the weapon voice, the voice that closes doors and kills possibilities and makes silence where futures used to be. Imagine him opening his mouth and hearing your own words return to you through the same instrument that delivers divine decrees. Every sentence you thought was private, now spoken with the pressure of the throne. Every secret now carrying the weight of Sinai. Every forgotten cruelty now landing with the finality of a command that reality itself obeys. And you will understand in that moment why the people at the mountain begged for distance. It was not the volume they feared. It was the truth coming through a voice that cannot lie. So tell me, if Metatron records every word you have spoken, what happens when he finally reads yours back? Is he mercy because he protects creation from the direct voice? Or is he the most terrifying angel of all, because he lets that voice enter anyway, through his mouth, through his office, through the sealed instrument that can no longer say no? This is not mythology. This is a question that has been waiting for you since the first word you ever spoke. If that question keeps you awake at night, you belong here. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and descend with us into the next Forbidden Archive.